What you are about to hear is the story of Temur and Alun, two souls bound by a fierce love amidst the endless Mongolian steppe. A warrior and a healer from rival tribes, they defy their world's harshest rules for a love as vast and untamed as the land they call home. The vast Mongolian steppe sprawled out like a sea of endless grass beneath an open sky, where the wind carried whispers of ancient stories. In this land, strength and loyalty were prized above all else, and survival depended on the unity of one's clan. Temur, a fearless warrior of the Borjigan tribe, knew these truths better than anyone. He had grown up under the harsh conditions of the steppe, learning to protect his people and lead them in times of conflict and hardship. Temur's life had always been about duty. As one of the strongest warriors of his tribe, he was expected to set an example, to live and die for his people without question. His life was one of loyalty, discipline, and battle, the needs of his clan always coming first. But everything changed one fateful evening when his path crossed with someone who would make him question all he knew. While scouting along the borderlands of his tribe's territory, Temur's sharp eyes caught sight of a group of riders approaching from the south. They were not Borjigan. Their clothing and the markings on their horses identified them as members of the Khatan tribe, a rival clan with whom the Borjigan had a fragile peace. The Khatan were known for their skills in healing and herbal medicine, as well as their fierce protection of their independence. Despite the truce, tensions between the tribes ran high, and any unexpected encounter was met with caution. In the group of riders, a figure stood out to Temur. She was a woman dressed in robes decorated with symbols of her clan, with long, dark hair braided with beads and feathers. She moved with a grace that seemed almost ethereal, her presence as calming as the vast landscape around her. Her name, he later learned, was Alun, a healer of the Khatan tribe. Their eyes met across the distance, and in that single, fleeting moment, the world seemed to pause. There was something in her gaze, intense, calm, and unwavering, that captured Temur's attention in a way he had never experienced. He approached cautiously, the weight of centuries-old rivalry pressing down on him. But as they began to speak, he found that Alun met his words with kindness and curiosity, her voice steady and soothing. Under the guise of trading herbs and small supplies, they spoke in low tones, their words careful but sincere. Alun's voice was as soft as the evening breeze, but her words carried wisdom beyond her years. She told him of her healing practices, of how she drew strength from the earth and believed in the unity of all living things. In turn, Temur shared stories of his battles, of his dreams of uniting the tribes to bring an end to the cycle of feuds and bloodshed that kept their people divided. Each meeting felt like a secret miracle, hidden from the judgmental eyes of their clans. They met under the vast sky, where they could steal moments of connection without the constraints of their tribal responsibilities. With each encounter, the walls between them crumbled a little more, and something fierce and unstoppable began to grow, a love as vast as the steppe itself, as wild as the winds that swept across it. But with each step they took toward one another, the dangers grew. They both understood the price of what they were doing. Any alliance between them would be seen as betrayal by their people, a disgrace to the honor of their clans. Temur, bound by duty to protect his tribe, knew the risks he was taking, but he could not resist the pull of this connection. And Alun, with her deep ties to the traditions of the Khatan tribe, felt the strain of the expectations placed upon her. She was destined to become a shaman for her people, a sacred role that required unwavering dedication. As the days turned into weeks, Temur and Alun found themselves entangled in a love that both thrilled and terrified them. They knew that each meeting could be their last, that any moment of discovery could tear them apart. And yet, They continued to meet, unable to resist the call of each other's presence. One evening, as they sat on a cliff overlooking the endless steppe, Alun placed her hand on Temur's, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and sorrow. "Our people will never accept this," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of the truth. "If we're discovered, they will see us as traitors." Temur's heart ached at her words, but he squeezed her hand in reassurance. "Let them call us traitors," he replied, his voice filled with determination. "I would face the wrath of 100 tribes just to spend one more moment with you." They sat together in silence, both knowing that their love was bound by the forces of tradition and duty. The vast sky stretched above them, indifferent to their struggles, while the wind carried their whispered promises across the steppe. They knew that their love was as dangerous as it was powerful, a fragile connection that could shatter with the first light of dawn. As the harsh winter passed and the snows began to melt, tensions between the Borjigan and Khatan tribes began to flare once more. Rumors of impending conflict spread like wildfire across the steppe, whispered by traders and travelers who passed between the camps. Clan leaders sharpened their weapons and held council meetings late into the night, each preparing for a confrontation that felt as inevitable as the changing of the seasons. The long-standing rivalry, fueled by ancient disputes over land and resources, seemed destined to erupt into violence once again. For Temur, the weight of his duty pressed down on him like a stone. As a warrior, he was bound to protect his people. As a leader, he was expected to be fearless and unwavering, to place the needs of his clan above all else. Yet, with each passing day, his thoughts returned to Alun, her voice and her touch haunting him even as he prepared for war. They had been forced to end their secret meetings as tensions rose, but their unspoken connection remained as fierce as ever. In the quiet moments between drills and preparations, Temur would slip away from the encampment, venturing into the hills where they had once met in secret. Standing alone on the windswept cliffs, he would close his eyes and imagine Alun's face, her gentle smile and calm strength, and he would make a silent vow to see her again, no matter the cost. His heart yearned for her presence, even as his mind warned him of the dangers that lay ahead. One evening, just as the sun began to set and bathe the steppe in shades of gold and crimson, Temur spotted a lone rider approaching his camp. The figure was cloaked in dark furs, but as they drew closer, he recognized the unmistakable figure of Alun. She had taken an enormous risk in seeking him out, and his heart pounded with a mixture of relief and fear as he led her away from the watchful eyes of his clan. They met in the shadows of a quiet grove, hidden from view by the thick trees and underbrush. The air between them was thick with unspoken words as they stared at each other with a mixture of longing and desperation. Temur reached out to touch her face, brushing a stray lock of hair from her eyes, and she closed her eyes at his touch, as if savoring the moment. "We can't keep meeting like this," Alun whispered, her voice barely audible. "The leaders of our tribes are preparing for war. My people will see me as a traitor if they find out, and they will show no mercy to you." Temur felt a pang of sorrow at her words, but he refused to let it break him. "I would fight 1,000 battles just to be with you," he replied fiercely, his gaze unwavering. "I don't care what they call me, Alun. My loyalty to my clan is strong, but my love for you is stronger." Tears welled in Alun's eyes, but she brushed them away, steeling herself. "We are bound by duty, Temur. I cannot abandon my people, and you cannot turn your back on yours. We must find a way to bring peace between our clans, to end this conflict before it destroys us all." As the days wore on, Temur and Alun concocted a desperate plan. They would each return to their tribes and speak with their leaders, pleading for peace and unity. They knew that it was a dangerous gamble, that the leaders of both clans were set in their ways and unlikely to listen to the pleas of two young lovers. But they were willing to risk everything for a chance at a future together, a world where their love could exist without fear. Their plan took them deep into the heart of tribal politics and clan loyalties. Alun, with her wisdom as a healer and knowledge of her people, argued passionately before the elders of the Khatan, urging them to consider the devastation that war would bring upon their people. Meanwhile, Temur met with the warriors of his clan, appealing to their sense of honor and calling upon the memories of fallen comrades, hoping to sway them from a path that would only lead to more bloodshed. Despite their best efforts, the whispers of war grew louder as pride and mistrust clouded the judgment of their leaders. Both Alun and Temur were warned time and again that their actions could be seen as treason, that their love was a weakness that could endanger their people. Yet, they continued to fight, clinging to the hope that their love could be a bridge between their warring clans, that their connection might inspire others to seek peace. The day finally arrived when the leaders of the Borjigan and Khatan gathered to discuss the terms of war. Tensions were high, and the air was thick with the scent of iron and leather as warriors prepared for the inevitable clash. Temur and Alun knew that this was their last chance to sway their people, to make them see the futility of violence. They had only moments to speak, to plead for peace, and the fate of their love and their people hung in the balance. They locked eyes across the gathering, a silent promise passing between them. They would stand together, no matter the outcome, united in their defiance of a world that sought to tear them apart. The path they had chosen was fraught with danger, but they were willing to risk everything for the sake of their love and the future they dreamed of, a world where they could be together, free from the constraints of clan and duty. But just as hope flickered on the horizon, betrayal struck from an unexpected place, and their love was thrown into a whirlwind of chaos and despair, setting the stage for a choice that would define their lives forever. As the gathering of clans disbanded, Temur and Alun's efforts seemed all but futile. The leaders of both the Borjigan and the Khatan remained steadfast in their decision to go to war, their years of mistrust outweighing the pleas of two young lovers. Temur returned to his camp with a heavy heart, knowing that the following dawn would bring bloodshed, and that his love for Alun would be yet another casualty of a war that neither of them wanted. That night, as the cold winds swept across the steppe, Temur sat by the fire, his thoughts consumed by Alun. His mind replayed every stolen moment they had shared, every whispered promise, and the overwhelming fear of losing her gnawed at his soul. He knew he had to see her one last time, to say goodbye if nothing else. The risk was high, but he could not let his love die without a final farewell. Under the cover of darkness, Temur slipped away from his camp, making his way to the secluded glade where they had once met in secret. To his surprise, Alun was already there, waiting for him, her silhouette illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the trees. They stood in silence for a moment, their eyes meeting in mutual understanding this might be their last night together. Without a word, Temur took her in his arms, holding her, as if he could somehow shield her from the violence that threatened to engulf them. Their embrace was filled with both passion and sorrow, a desperate attempt to make the most of the few hours they had left. The air around them crackled with unspoken words, their connection deeper than any vows or promises could convey. Finally, Alun spoke, her voice trembling. "I cannot bear the thought of losing you, Temur. This war, it feels so pointless, yet it will tear us apart. I can't watch as you and my people destroy each other." Temur brushed a tear from her cheek, his own heart breaking at the sight of her anguish. "Then we won't let it tear us apart," he replied fiercely. "We can leave, Alun. We can escape this cycle of hatred and bloodshed. There is a life for us beyond these clans, beyond this war. All we have to do is choose it." Alun looked at him, a spark of hope flickering in her eyes. But reality set in as quickly as it had come. And where would we go? Both of our clans would see us as traitors. We would live our lives as fugitives, always looking over our shoulders. But Temur was resolute. "I would rather live as a fugitive with you than as a warrior without you. We could find a place where no one knows us, where we are free to build a life together, away from the hatred of our people." Alun's heart ached with both fear and longing. She knew the cost of running away, abandoning her people, her family, her duty. But the alternative was unbearable, a life filled with nothing but the hollow ache of what could have been. At that moment, Alun made her decision. "If we do this, Temur, there is no turning back. We will have to leave everything behind." Temur took her hands, his eyes fierce with determination. "As long as I have you, I will need nothing else." They spent the night planning their escape, the weight of their decision pressing down on them but also filling them with a renewed sense of purpose. When dawn broke, they would slip away under the cover of the early morning mist, taking only what they could carry and leaving the rest of their lives behind. The steppe would be their refuge, its vastness both a comfort and a shield as they sought a new life together. But as the first light of morning crept over the horizon, disaster struck. A scout from the Borjigan clan had spotted them in the glade, and within moments word spread like wildfire. Accusations of treason echoed through the camp, and both clans prepared to hunt down the traitors who had dared to defy them. Temur and Alun were left with no choice but to run, pursued by warriors from both sides, each determined to bring them to justice. The chase was brutal, stretching across the rugged terrain of the steppe as Temur and Alun fought to stay ahead of their pursuers. They moved swiftly, their knowledge of the land their only advantage. But as the day wore on, the weight of their decision began to take its toll, their exhaustion palpable as they struggled to keep moving. Just as hope began to fade, they reached a rocky outcrop overlooking the vast expanse of the steppe. Here, at the edge of the world, they turned to face their fate. Surrounded by warriors from both clans, Temur and Alun held hands, their love a silent act of defiance against the hatred that had brought them to this point. The leaders of the Borjigan and Khatan tribes stepped forward, their faces twisted with fury. "You have betrayed us, Temur," his chieftain spat, his voice laced with venom. "You have forsaken your people for the sake of a forbidden love." Temur stood tall, his voice steady. "I have only chosen what was right for my heart. I will not apologize for loving Alun, nor for seeking a life beyond the cycle of hatred and violence that binds us all." The leaders exchanged a glance, their anger tempered by a flicker of something else, perhaps admiration, perhaps envy. But duty overruled any sentiment, and they raised their weapons, prepared to carry out the sentence of death. In their final moments, Temur and Alun looked into each other's eyes, their love unbreakable even in the face of death. They shared a silent vow, a promise that transcended time and space. As they held each other ready to face whatever came next, a miracle happened. The leaders, moved by the strength of their love, lowered their weapons, a moment of unity breaking through the divide. Wordlessly, the clans turned and walked away, leaving Temur and Alun alone on the cliff. Their love had defied death, had changed the course of history, even if only in a small way. Holding each other tightly, they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, free at last from the chains of duty and hatred. And so they vanished into the wilderness, two souls bound by a love so fierce that it could not be broken even by the cruelties of the world around them. Legends would be told of the warrior and the healer who whose love defied the clans and brought peace to a world divided. A reminder that even in the harshest of times, love could endure.